Hi, I'm Heather McLean from the Alliance Against the Northern Pass, and today we're going to be interviewing Kevin Smith, a Republican candidate for governor for New Hampshire. And we're going to have you get to know him a little bit today because our primaries are coming up.
They are.
And yes, and we'd like to let you know who Kevin is and what he stands for. And today we're going to begin with the Northern Pass, but then we're going to move on to a few other questions for you.
Sure. All right.
So we assume you've heard that the Forest Society is buying, they want to buy $2.5 million worth of land to put it into conservation in order to stop the Northern Pass. And this is a critical point that would link the two co-ops loop together. So wanted to know how you felt about that and if you felt that it was worthy cause for people to support the Forest Society.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's a worthy cause for them to do that, and certainly it's well within the purview of the Forest Society to purchase that land. You know, look, Heather, I've been steadfastly against the Northern Pass project from the very beginning because I think it would have a devastating effect not only on the landscape of New Hampshire, but on the effects on the private property owners as well, where they want to build the towers. And that's why from the very beginning I've said there's a right way and a wrong way to do this particular project. And the wrong way was the way they proposed, which was taking land through eminent domain and also putting the towers along the right of way. I'm more than happy if they want to start discussions about burying the lines or do as Jeannie Forrester has suggested, maybe having an energy corridor. And I know there's going to be there's a study committee out there that's going to be looking at these things. But as governor, you know, you have to show leadership on this issue. And as someone that will have a lot of leverage and influence over the site evaluation committee that will be put together next year, I intend to use every leveraging power that I can do to make sure that there's people on there that are looking out for the best interests of the people of the North Country and making sure that those towers don't go right through the North Country.
Thank you. That's a great answer.
Sure.
And I would also wanted to know what your thoughts were with the site evaluation committee, and do you think the people who have worked in the energy industry or power generation or transmission facilities should be on the site evaluation committee?
Well, I do think you have to have all sides represented, but certainly they shouldn't have a majority seat at that table.
Okay.
And I think all interests have to have an equal seat at that table. But again, as governor, you know, my feelings are already known to PSNH and Northeast Utilities where I stand on this, and they know that I'm going to be standing up for, as again said before, the private property owners all throughout the North Country, all throughout the state of New Hampshire, where these towers would essentially be going. And I'm going to make sure that of the folks whom I get to select to put on that committee, they will have those best interests in mind. And it's something I will take a hands-on approach to, and not leaving the people of the North Country behind on this particular project. You know, look at certainly we need a long-term energy plan in our state. Electricity costs are much too high in the state of New Hampshire right now. But as I said recently on a radio show, it shouldn't be at all costs. And right now it's like they're wanting to do it at all costs. And what I mean by that is you know, putting really just, you know, harming the landscape of the North Country and the scenic beauty that we have, but also doing it in such a way that would have a devastating effect on the landowners in that area. You know, Tom Mullen, whom I know you know well, who's been a supporter of mine, he owns the Owl's Nest Resort in Camden, and he has had difficulty even selling the place in over a year because just the prospect of the towers going through his property have prevented people from wanting to purchase anything, you know, any home on his property. And so it's already having an effect before it's even built. You can't imagine what it would do to the land values if those towers were allowed to go in. So, you know, look, this is a critical issue, and it's not time. It certainly is an issue to have anyone with milquetoast leadership taking the bull by the horns. You know, you've got to know what your stance is when you go in there and who you're going to be looking out for in that particular project.
Absolutely, and the whole issue about property rights and property devaluation is something that the Northern Pass and PSNH like to deny, that it's going to have absolutely no effect on property value. And we're already seeing that it does have an effect, a direct effect, and that there are properties that have been turned down because of the potential of the Northern Pass.
Right.
And that's something that this company doesn't want you to see. So thank you for.
Oh no, and look, I've talked to homeowners as well.
Yeah.
That would be right, and you know, near the route where they're proposing to put the towers through, and they've shown me what their assessment has been since the proposed project, and it's significant. It's significantly less than what it would have been had the towers not been going through there. And a number of them now are looking at selling their homes and trying to just get out of their homes before the towers go through. And you know, it's unfortunate that this issue has taken up so much oxygen in the room over the last year and a half.
Right.
You know, and it was completely unnecessary from the very beginning, with the way they came out right out of the gates with the proposed route, with really not even ever consulting anyone in that particular, you know, area of the state.
That's
and
right.
This is something that Governor Lynch should have had a handle on as well. And it was really asleep at the wheel when they were proposing doing this project. And I don't think he actually really woke up to it until after the fact, when he realized everyone was up in arms because of, you know, what they were proposing to do. And so again, it's time for strong leadership on this issue, and you can be rest assured that I would certainly be providing that strong leadership on it.
I believe you. And I also want to say that now, let's take that one step further, and let's hope that Jeannie Forrester is actually successful in creating this energy corridor.
Right.
That would generate money for the state.
Sure.
So say for the example, the Northern Pass, we're buried on the state-owned rights-of-way,
Yeah.
as opposed to down the private rights-of-way that PSNH owns.
Yeah.
The money would then go to the state, generating upwards into maybe $100 million a year.
Right.
What do you think that money should be used for?
Well, I mean, there's, you know, a number of things it could be used for. Certainly infrastructure improvements in the state. You know, one of the things I've talked about often is, you know, economic development and job creation in the North Country and areas of Grafton County, Cheshire County, Sullivan. All of these areas, Carroll County, could use more economic development and job creation. But the reason it isn't happening right now is because the infrastructure isn't there to allow commerce into those particular areas. And the only way you're going to get more jobs there is to make it easier and more accessible to get to those particular places. But of course, that means spending money. That means investing money into doing those sorts of things. And so certainly if we did have an energy corridor where PSNH was essentially leasing the land from the state would be getting revenue from that, and the state could use that revenue to go towards those infrastructure improvements. It could be really a win-win all around. You know, PSNH would get to do their particular energy project, but at the same time, you know, the state would be getting money to be able to spur economic development and job growth in the areas of the state that need it so desperately.
I couldn't agree more. So instead of PSNH as a company taking all that money because it's on their private road and it going into their company, which is not necessarily going to generate the kind of jobs that improving our infrastructure would do. And backhandedly, we're talking about jobs for the Northern Pass. If it goes on this right-of-way, then that bleeds out into even more jobs for the state to improve the infrastructure. So I like that. Okay, so now that we've talked about the Northern Pass, which I've gotten a good feel for it, and I like the fact that I feel as though confident that you're going to be a good leader in that area. I'm sure that people want to know some of the other feelings on your other issues.
Sure.
Okay, so we're going to talk just for a moment about the issue of gambling.
Sure.
And whether you believe that gambling should become a part of New Hampshire, whether it should be just in the southern portion, or whether it should be in the North Country.
Right.
And what is the difference between the southern portion and the North Country?
Right. Yeah, you know, I support a limited plan of expanded gaming in the state, and you know, I don't think we should have any more than 2 licenses. And the reason I say that, you know, I talked extensively with Charlie McIntyre, who's the director of our lottery right now in the state, and you know, New Hampshire doesn't have a huge population to support a whole bunch of casinos, and I don't want proliferation of casinos in the state either. But if we had to, I think it's manageable, and I think that those casinos could survive given both our population and the tourism that would come in for it as well. My stipulations on it is that any revenue, or 2 stipulations. One is that we have a strong regulatory infrastructure in place before any casinos are built in the state. And then number 2, any revenues derived from expanded gaming would not go directly to the general fund, the general treasury, because all that's going to do is expand government, create more spending programs, which, then we'll be once again looking for revenue. So instead I've said, let's use that money to either offset property taxes through more funding for education, to complete certain infrastructure projects like I-93, which is still $250 million unfunded, or to lower business taxes as well, but something other than going into the general treasury. And as far as where to put them, I think it should be a fair bidding process. I don't think the state should be picking winners and losers, and that's a difference between my primary opponent and I. He says that the state should essentially choose a monopoly, have one site at Rockingham Park. And what I've said is that it should be a fair bidding process. Rockingham Park can certainly bid on that particular site, but I don't think the state ought to be in the business of choosing monopolies, picking winners and losers. It should be transparent and should have a fair bid process.
Okay, that sounds fair. And I like your idea of funneling money into education, especially since my son is in college and I've watched the tuition rates go.
Oh yeah, is he in school here? Yeah, okay, at UNH,
yeah.
Right. Well, and I talk a lot about, keeping young people in the state, after they graduate by having more job opportunities for them. But the reality now is that we're almost pricing them out of the state in terms of college tuition.
Right.
And
that's right.
We can't keep them here after they graduate if they're not going to school here in the first place. And so we have to find a way through investing more funding in higher ed to keep tuition costs low for our own in-state students, to make it more attractive for them to want to go to our schools rather than them looking elsewhere because they can actually find a lower cost school outside the state of New Hampshire. That makes no sense.
No, it doesn't. And my son's a 4.0 student, so you'll want him in state.
Excellent. That's great.
My son, he's a good boy. Okay, we're going to go on, since we're talking college, and all these college students might hear this, but not for them, okay?
Yeah.
But there is the issue of medical marijuana.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, my feeling is that I don't think the state itself can regulate medicinal marijuana. I think it would take a change in the federal rules, through the FDA. What I've said is that if you could treat marijuana as a medicine like you would any other controlled substance, such that it's approved by the FDA, your doctor writes a script, and you go to your local pharmacy, and your CVS, Walgreens, whatever, they dispense it, fine, that's one thing. But in states where it has been legalized for medicinal purposes, where it's state-run only, they've run into a lot of problems, whether it's through dispensaries,
yes,
or through having it grown in your home. That's very difficult to regulate. It means creating a new state bureaucracy just to do it. And look, law enforcement's got enough issues on their own hands, let alone now starting to go into people's homes to see if they're not creating more marijuana plants than what they're supposed to be doing. So, I have an issue. I don't believe the state can regulate it by itself. I think it's going to take changes to the federal rules and federal laws if we're going to use it for medicinal purposes. Because the last thing I'd want to see is a proliferation of use of marijuana in our state, since New Hampshire does have a drug problem right now among its youth. And I hear this from doctors, I hear it from healthcare professionals, law enforcement, and we have such a lack of we don't have adequate amount of substance abuse treatment programs in the state right now that we can hardly handle the problems we do have currently, and I'd hate to see it get out of control to a point where we can't control it in the state.
Yeah, that's one point where I'm going to say pot is probably the least of our problems because and I do not inhale, just so you know.
Okay.
Anybody else out there needs to know. But
and you're not running for office either.
And I'm not running for office, so if I want to inhale, I will. But no, I don't inhale. But I do think that there are so many other drugs that are so much more, far more dangerous, and they're finding bath salts they can make into drugs.
That's right. Yeah.
But we'll move on from that, because there is the point of what you're saying is that you want to see it federally taken care of before the state takes it on. So
well, I think it has to be regulated at the federal level first if the state does decide to move in that direction.
Okay, all right, good enough. And so now, would you like to see the governor's seat moved from 2 years to 4 years?
I think it's probably best if we did do that, and I'd even be willing to say, so it doesn't appear to be self-serving, I'd say that if we put the question on it, because it would take a constitutional amendment to do that, to make the governor's term from 2 years to 4 years. And I said, let's put it on the ballot, and it could take effect after my term was done, so that it doesn't, like as I said, appear to be self-serving. But I think for future governors, to have 4 years and have term limits as well, 2 4-year terms, I think is enough for any governor. But it's, I think, important to have, enough time to implement your agenda and your policies
Yes.
for the state, because I've talked a lot about having to plan for the long term as a state. We can't always plan budget to budget. You have to think long term. But oftentimes it's difficult to plan long term when you're always up for election every 2 years.
Right.
And when you have that much, turnaround between the legislature and the governor as well, it can be difficult a lot of times to affect change over a long period of time. So it's something that I think would be beneficial, to the state, but I don't know if we'll see that on the ballot anytime soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so now what I'd like you to do is to point out some of the differences between you and your main opponent.
Sure. Well, certainly on the Northern Pass issue, I believe there's a big difference. As I said before, I've been very consistent from the beginning in my opposition to the project. My opponent, Ovid, has given multiple positions depending on where he's speaking to. When we had a debate in Keene a few weeks ago, he came out and said that there's never been a proposed route for the Northern Pass, which we know isn't true. It's why everyone got so up in arms about it in the first place, is because they did have a proposed route for it. So I think that's a difference, and that I've been very consistent from the beginning. There's a difference in our tax plans as well. I call for tax cuts for businesses across the board to make us a more business-friendly environment, to allow companies that are here to keep more of their money to grow more jobs, and also to entice more companies to move into the state as well by having a lower business tax climate. His calls for a very minor reduction in the business profits tax from 8.5% to 8%. I call for reducing it to 5% over 7 years. And he also wants to give targeted tax credit to certain industries. Again, mine would call for a cut across the board. So every industry would get a tax cut. And I think that's, again, the right way to go, because I don't think the state should pick winners and losers and who gets a break and who doesn't get a break. There's a difference in our budgeting approach as well. Ovid's called for doing something called zero-based budgeting. It's something 17 other states have tried, including New Hampshire, and it's never worked once in any of those states. And it sounds nice in theory, but practically it doesn't work. I've called for doing something called performance-based budgeting, which is setting your budget priorities by putting metrics, measurements, and outcomes on every program you're funding to determine whether or not those programs are working or not. So you can determine the necessity and also the efficacy of those programs by having a system of metrics and outcomes. It's something that I did when I was the assistant director of our juvenile justice department, is we looked at outcomes and budgeted our priorities and the programs we were funding based on if programs were getting good outcomes or not. And we could do that across every agency in state government. But again, that's a big difference, because Ovid's never worked with the state budget. He doesn't have any knowledge of how state government works, and that's something I've been intimately involved with as a legislator, someone who worked for a governor, someone who ran a state agency. The governor's office is a 2-year term, which means there's no time for on-the-job training. You got to know what your plan is right when you go in there and how you're going to go about executing that plan. And I wouldn't need that on-the-job training. And then, if people go on our website, they'll see there's other differences in terms of our education reform plans. I have a 16-point education reform plan on my website. Ovid dedicates about 3 sentences to education. So there are quite a few differences between us that I think the voters really need to look at before the primary, to really say who has the better ideas, the better solutions for how to run state government.
You seem to be a very fair-minded individual. And
I try to be.
Yeah. So now, on that note, you're married to a Democrat, am I correct?
No, Susie's a Republican. Sorry about that. No, Susie's a Republican. Well, Susie's both an independent and a Republican.
Okay.
I don't know what she's currently registered as.
Okay.
But she is. She's more independent-minded than anything else.
Is she going to vote for you?
She is going to vote for me. I've asked her for her vote, but it's very funny you bring that up, Heather, because a couple of years ago I ran for delegate to the state convention, which is essentially something you go to your town clerk, and most people don't even know. It's only Republicans have it, the Democrats don't have it, but you just go to your town clerk and you sign up for it. I don't think it costs any money to do it. And so I had signed up to be, and on the ballot it says delegate to the state convention. Well, I had never told Susie that I was doing this. It's one day out of the year that you actually have to show up for something. Well, anyway, she went and voted, and she comes home, And she says, she goes, Kevin, she goes, are you running for something? And I said, well, what are you talking about? She goes, well, I saw this name Kevin Smith on there. And I said, oh yeah. I said, I put it to be, I said, you voted for me, right? She goes, well, no. She goes, first, I didn't know if it was you or not. She goes, and second of all, I'm going, well, if it is him, what is he signing up? Where is this convention? How long is this going on for? She goes, so I just decided I was leaving it blank. So it was very funny. We both got a good laugh out of it, and I did end up winning and got to be a delegate to it. But after that, I said, I'm definitely going to inform her every time my name is definitely on the ballot going forward. So I do have her vote for governor.
Communication skills.
Yes, communication 101.
All right, well, I want to thank you for giving us this interview, and just wanted to close by saying, is there anything else you'd like to tell the people about you?
No, I would just say, look, at the primary is September 11th. I ask for your vote. I need your vote. Go to our website. Check out the two candidates, where we both stand on the issues. And, I hope I can earn your vote on September the 11th. The website's kevinsmithforgovernor.com. And I appreciate your time today.
Thank you, Kevin.
All right. Thanks, Heather.